Can you see me?
Yes, I can. Good evening. And I think everybody else can too. Uh, let's make sure that this is working. And good evening, Nicholas. Can you hear me and see me?
I can't see you. I can hear you though.
All right,
I don't know if it really matters.
let's get me up on the screen. It should be easy. It
Yeah.
should be easy. Well, now I just lost you. Okay, everybody can see me. I gotta do this. You gotta excuse me, guys, because again, this is my maiden voyage here, second maiden voyage with this. All right, let's get you going. Ecamm live, and why are you not showing? Can we see? I can see you on the screen. I can't see me yet. Oh, I can see me just a little bit. All right. Good evening, everyone. So, how do we look, guys? Nicholas is the big one, right? And I'm the small one. And we welcome you to Climate Changes. There's a lot to talk about tonight. I just want to make sure that this looks good to everyone. So, I am going to ask you guys, how is this looking? Okay, how are we looking? Because
Well,
as
as
again,
long as
I'm
people can see me, I guess that's all that
yeah,
matters.
it's what matters. But I think okay. But I need somebody to say who they can see because I can see me on the phone part, but Nick is small. All right, we want to make Nick big. Okay, let's bring Nick in and make him bigger because all I can see is all right. Window, enter full screen. Okay. Now I'm on full screen. Nick is little. We don't want Nick to be little. Well, I can't see the big guy. Can't see Nicholas now. All right, wait. All right, guys. Don't worry. We'll get there. We will get there. Nicholas, in the meantime, if you
Yeah.
can talk about while I'm farting around with getting the right screen,
Okay.
because they
Yeah.
don't want to see
Right now,
me.
I put the live stream on my computer to see what it actually looks like to everybody else, and yeah.
Okay,
Now I
now,
can see you.
can everybody see Nicholas now? Because that's who is the most important person. And I'm
Yeah,
moving
I can't.
this.
I'm not on there yet, so
You will
yeah.
be, but everybody can hear you. And they
Yes.
said Nicholas is a little rectangle in the upper left hand corner. But I
Yes.
just, let's get small. We don't want to make Nick big Sandy suitcase thinking. No, I think
Yeah.
Nick is now the big one. So we don't need to worry about my face all that
Okay.
much.
Yeah.
We really need to worry about you. So welcome. Okay.
Hi.
So what's going
How are
on,
you?
Nick? Because
How
I
are you
think I'm
doing?
blocked anyway. And I'm going to work on this while you talk. What I really want you to start with is, and I wanted to talk the weather that's going on, things, the heat in India, Mexico, the rain in the wet, where I am, constant rain,
Yeah.
all this crazy stuff that's going on. It would be really, really interesting to hear about your take on what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Basically, um, to cut to the chase, the summer is in the northern hemisphere is looking historically hot again, and it's not just heat, but it's also the jet stream in the northern hemisphere continuing to become extremely destabilized, meaning it's not flowing, progressing in its normal west-east pattern. It's exhibiting extreme wave patterns that are producing the same weather over the same areas, which of course extreme events aren't only extreme single events, but an extreme string of events that don't change over time. And it's getting very serious across the world. Obviously, northern hemisphere is having significant impacts, but it's already been very, very bad in the southern hemisphere, and with heat in Australia, and they're still getting abnormally warm temperatures in parts of Australia, even in the middle of their or the beginnings of their winter. And also some parts of South America dealing with significant heavy rainfall, flooding. But the northern hemisphere is really getting pounded. We're seeing in the Arctic basin itself, so the Central Arctic Basin, and also Laptev Sea, Kara Sea, East Siberian Sea. The seas near Alaska,
Right.
part of the Arctic Ocean. The sea ice is at record lows. I mean, it's significantly below what it was even in the previous couple of years, and certainly in 2012. It's very, very anomalous from what it's been in the previous few years, and that is a result of of extreme heat for ice.
Mm-hmm.
So temperatures are 30 to 40 Celsius, or 30 to 40 Fahrenheit, or about 20 Celsius above normal. That has been impacting the Arctic since basically February. It continues into March, April, May, now June. You have parts of Siberia. Yet again, like last year in July, when I reported on what was happening up there last year, this year you're getting temperatures in the 70s and 80s within tens of miles, if not on the shoreline of the Arctic Ocean in northern Siberia, and it's rapidly destroying ice up there. And in addition, you have actual extreme heat for humans and animals and plants impacting East China, North China, the North China coastal plain. Southeast Asia has had record-breaking temperatures. Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. We've seen horrible heat in India. Temperatures that are in the range of 45 to 50 degrees Celsius. So that's 113 to 122 degrees. With It's either a dry heat if you're in the interior, or if you're in near coastal areas or in Bangladesh. This weekend, they're getting heat indices in excess of 115 to 120 degrees during the day, and nighttime lows are also extremely warm, not providing much relief. We're seeing similar patterns of extreme heat in the Middle East. Air temperatures in the shade exceeding 120 degrees in some places. Parts of North Africa. There's reports that I heard forecasts for heat in excess of 100 degrees in Sicily this weekend or early next week. So, and of course, we've had some extreme heat, obviously, in the United States too. In California, temperatures over 100 degrees in San Francisco in June, which is unheard of. And heat indices over 120 degrees in South Texas, like a week and a half ago. So the overriding, message from global warming is the wrath of heat. And where it's not hot, you're getting too much rain, as we continue to have in parts of the plains, the Midwest, Tennessee, Ohio Valley, the United States, Ontario and Canada. Yeah. United Kingdom, parts of France. I just saw a report of devastating crop destruction from heavy rain and hail in southeast France, because of significant storms that blew through that area, and it may have caused some farmers to have 90 to 100% crop losses in France. Obviously we're seeing major crop losses, catastrophic crop losses in the United States, in parts of Canada, Western Canada, where there's fires and historic drought going on. Crop failures in East Africa from either drought or drought that ended abruptly in tropical cyclones impacting parts of Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, leading to crop failures there. And of course, crop failures in India. And people are starting to leave villages in India because of the extreme heat and lack of water. It's too hot, and the water is running out in their aquifers.
I saw that.
It's just it just seems like 2019 is starting to be, 2018, 2017, those years were sort of the beginnings of the big event, and I'm not talking about climate change, I'm talking about these big extreme weather events that are a result of abrupt climate change. So Hurricane Harvey and the mega fires in California, Siberia, the huge droughts in Australia intensifying. But we started to enter a year now where we're for the first time on a global scale, we're starting to see real global damage being done by the rapidly changing climate. You can go to any of these continents and see major damage being done either to crops or to cities and towns, communities, villages, or to infrastructure. And really it cascades to economic damage and damage to nature. I mean, we're seeing, bats falling out of the sky in Australia, monkeys in Mexico and India dying of heat stroke, and thirst. Animals that know how to deal with the nature, because they lived in nature for thousands or tens of thousands of years as a species, and they're falling and they're collapsing from the effects of these extreme heat events or these floods. So for me, this is like really a turning point for me, where you're just seeing all of these things beginning to kill or destroy all around the world all at once.
Exponential. I have a question already. Osama is asking, does the freshwater runoff from Greenland cause the Arctic sea ice extent to increase since it's lighter and has a higher freezing point?
It could cause some sea ice changes, maybe some extent growth, perhaps south of Greenland, if the temperatures of the water can get cold enough, particularly in the wintertime. But it also has an effect of weakening the Gulf Stream current going from the Gulf of Mexico to England and to the United Kingdom and Iceland. And obviously, some have suggested, it could cause much colder conditions in Europe when it fails. What it's more likely to do in the context of abrupt climate change is it's more likely to um, perhaps cause parts of Northwest Europe and the British Isles not to warm as fast,
Yeah.
but it will also cause a huge temperature gradient, sea surface temperature gradient to develop in the North Atlantic, which obviously is reflected in the atmosphere and may actually intensify the jet stream over the North Atlantic, leading to more powerful ocean storms that could impact the British Isles, impact Iceland, impact Greenland, and be sent, particularly as sea ice declines and the main gyre of the polar vortex shifts from the Arctic
Mm-hmm.
center, the geographic center, towards Greenland, because Greenland obviously it's not going to all melt off as fast as the sea ice is.
Okay.
It will be the cold spot in the northern hemisphere. So a
Right.
lot of the storm systems will go into the Arctic Ocean, which actually is a feedback that will warm the Arctic faster and destroy more sea ice
This
even in the
is
wintertime. So
this is what we're
it's
seeing. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I'm reading all of these articles and your material. I mean, I'm always on your Patreon looking, and well, it's kind of scary because nobody realizes anything. You know, you go around anywhere else besides our genre or our the scientists that we surround ourselves with, and no,
Yeah,
nobody's clueless.
yeah, no one's talking about it because it
No.
requires, it requires a an interdisciplinary ability to look at things from an interdisciplinary perspective. And I mean, most people know me as a meteorologist, but I'm also trained in interdisciplinary research and interdisciplinary theory. The theory
Right.
of actually integrating insights, theories from separate disciplines that look at the same problem and actually trying to fuse them into something that's coherent, comprehensive, and bigger than the parts that put it together in the first place.
Wow.
And that's hard to do. It takes a lot of time and effort. But
Hmm.
when you with climate change, it's one of those things. And really, what we're I talk obviously about climate change, but the collapse of the biosphere in this sixth mass extinction event that is underway is really a convergence of three problems. Um, and they all stem from human growth and consumption and pollution. So it's climate change, which is being caused by the pollution of fossil fuel burning. So greenhouse gases.
Hmm.
There's ecological destruction, which is caused by changes in land use. So you're building cities, mining, you're destroying the land. And
Right.
then there's also uh, industrial pollution. So you're talking about the byproducts of mining, coal, everything from coal to rare earth metals. You're talking about plastic pollution. You're talking about radiological pollution, nuclear waste. So all of those things tend to converge together, and it leads to the destruction of species and to humans that spend all of their effort trying to stay alive. Our species is still growing, but we're polluting our environment and slowly polluting ourselves, with all the plastics that I'm drinking water right now. It's probably got microplastics in it.
Who
The
knows?
air I'm breathing is probably has some nucleotides from Chernobyl. I mean, Fukushima.
Oh,
You
did
know,
you just watch that?
I,
Did you watch it?
yeah, I mean,
Oh.
it's everywhere. And you don't know. I don't think we really have any understanding of. I mean, even the carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere. There's hypotheses that may be contributing to the deaths of insects. Maybe a carbon dioxide, um, um, uh, maybe a poison for a lot of insects that aren't accustomed to such high levels of carbon dioxide. And of course, carbon dioxide is making our crops less nutritious
Right.
as time passes too. So um, it's it's something that you don't really appreciate unless you're able to do to look at it from an interdisciplinary standpoint. Because you can't do that, then then you always can have the conclusion that there's no mass extinction underway. Humans aren't under threat of extinction. This is doomerism. This is, blah, 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 blah.
Alarmist, you're crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But most of that becomes because they don't have who they are, whether it's a your layperson or a scientist. They don't have the whole picture.
right.
You can't come to that conclusion without the whole picture.
Let me ask you. I think you could see the questions too, but unfortunately, I am afraid that I can't get them up on the screen like I usually do because if I click the other screen, I might lose
Yeah.
you. I do not want to do that. So, Moose Gal has a question. Too many Americans don't know the difference between climate and weather. Can you please explain the difference?
Sure. Basically, weather is an individual event or phenomenon, and climate is the average conditions which occur in a particular area over a course of many seasons or many years or many decades. A lot of the best way I try to explain weather and climate is weather is the melody and climate is the harmony. The melody in a musical piece typically revolves around the background harmony that exists through the entire piece or through the entire section of a piece of
Okay.
music. And so if you change the harmony and move it to some distant key that sounds very different from what it was before, it changes the entire character of the melody too because it plays on top of the harmony. So that's what's happening with climate change. If you change the climate, your whole statistical distribution of weather changes, meaning the events that you get that you're used to on average having happen every so often, they become less frequent, they become more frequent, they become less or more intense. And as everything that you've built around the statistics before, even if you didn't have like specific statistics, you just kind of like knew, oh, it's going to rain around this time, it's going to be the dry season around this time. Everything that you planned, your civilization, your city, everything around all of these years, decades, millennia, they suddenly change and you can't plan for anything. I mean, the perfect example of this is probably what's happening in India right now. They're used to the monsoon coming around,
Regular
around
weather.
regularly, like in
Mm-hmm.
in late. I think it's later in May, and they're used to the rainfall. If they know they're going to be heavy rainfall, and then it stops, and then it comes back again later in the year. The monsoon it just is heavily delayed. It's just being very slow in its progression, and so as a result, usually you have clouds, you have rainfall. It can be very warm, muggy conditions, extremely sticky, high heat indices. But the thing you're dealing with is usually the rain. It's not the heat. But if you don't have the clouds around, guess what? It just gets hotter and
Right.
hotter and hotter, and you're
Oh.
basically seeing what India looks like in without a monsoon in the summertime. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a blazing hot desert like climate. But
What's
it's
the
not supposed
relief?
to be that way.
No,
It's
but what's
supposed to
the
be that
relief for
way.
Mexico?
Yeah.
Mexico too. The town I
Yeah.
don't have it in my head the name, but it was well, it was what 120. I don't know. I
Hmm.
had it was it. They don't have a monsoon coming.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah. I
their?
mean,
What are they looking forward to?
yeah. I mean, even Iraq and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're used to 100-degree heat all the time. They're getting 120-degree heat, and
Right.
this is like that's that for humans are good at acclimating to different climate environments, and they can figure out ways to keep cool or stay warm in some cases.
Yeah.
But when you start to have extremes that really knock on the door of what you can really adapt to, and you're not used to them, then that's when people start getting sick, start dying, or start walking away. And that's what's
Yeah.
happening in India. They can't deal with the heat. And they can't even have water. With why should they stay there? And so they're retreating. Um, and you're probably going to see a lot of that. I mean, we're already seeing some of that in Central America, where it's drying out, crops are failing over and over again, and so people come to the United States. They just
Right.
walk. Um,
I think I
so
got
it.
a comment on the screen, but now I can't move. I don't know what's with this thing, but you know what? As I'm learning, it's always new. Oh wait, well, I think I got it. I think I got that. I think we can now have comments on the screen. Okay,
That's
and I
cool.
didn't and I didn't lose you. So there's probably a few of me on the screen. I think there's two little heads of mine on the screen. I'm gonna tell you this Ecam Live. It's really a trip to learn, especially since I only do it. I'm not good at this stuff. I'm just learning. But anyway,
Yeah,
guys. So I think the difference. You answered the question with the weather and the climate.
yeah,
Weather. We know what weather is. Weather is what happens. Weather is rain. Weather is snow. Climate. Right, what you were saying is what we live through. It's over time how climate can be,
yeah.
right? The
And
changes. Go ahead.
of
I'm not
course,
you.
well, I was just gonna say, of course, the bizarre thing about abrupt climate change is it's abrupt, meaning it's changes occurring increasingly over decades, and now really we're probably going to be start seeing more and more profound changes over course of years at a time, meaning on scale on lengths of time of less than a decade, and
Mm,
because of these feedback loops that have been kicking in and accelerating in the past, some of them just in the past 10 or 15 years, um, and you start to um, have your climate regime is getting compressed in such shorter time scales, you can't really all your weather events are becoming a symptom of this changing climate. So
right.
the difference between weather and climate, I think, actually starts to become fuzzy because like the jet stream issues we're seeing right now, that's a direct result of problems in a long-term climatic regime in the Arctic with its sea ice sheet. Literally as that's collapsing, you're getting an almost immediate response by the jet stream that impacts our day-to-day weather. So that's a actual climate change phenomenon you're seeing on meteorological timescales. Because things are changing so rapidly.
Right.
Like 20 years ago, you wouldn't have seen something like that on such timescales. But now you're seeing literally all of these blocking patterns, which are caused by huge ridges of high pressure that sit in the same place, and then you get these significant troughs of low pressure, these dips,
Okay.
that dip from the pole down to the equator that produce a lot of heavy rainfall, abnormally cool weather in a couple of
Is
places.
that what's happening here? I mean, it's June
Yeah,
16th and it's in the 50s. We're freezing. It's been raining. We had 2 nice days that maybe got up to 60 something, but it is another whole week of rain and crap. I don't
yeah,
nobody gets it, but I mean, I try to tell them, you get it. I
yeah. I
try,
mean,
but you know,
Yeah, I mean, they're just having the same problems in the UK, in parts of France, and while many other places from Eastern Europe to Siberia to the West Coast are roasting. Now, of course, India is roasting, and in much of that subtropical zone from North Africa to India in Southeast Asia are roasting in
right.
crazy amounts of heat. So I mean, yeah, it's you really start to see changes that are occurring on time scales that are more meteorological. I mean, or events that are sensitive to meteorological conditions, such as the sea ice. Sea ice in the Arctic is so thin,
Oh
it's losing
man.
volume. The ice in like I said in the Arctic Ocean itself is very anomalous, well into record territory compared to recent years. And there's no end in sight to the heat. It's just going to stay warm up there all week. You're having huge spikes in surface melts from Greenland because it's just too warm across Greenland.
There was a
Uh,
question. Hang on, wait. Let's see if we can get to that question because it was, and I was looking for an end. Nick. Okay. Now Kim says She read today about how much Greenland was melting, but someone said that it happens every year and it'll refreeze. I say it's not true. All right, Nick, what do you say about that? That's Kim, and I made her a moderator.
Oh,
Kim is now a
oh, this,
moderator.
oh, this melting that's not even close to being normal.
Right, exactly.
It's this is the
What is
melting
she
that
supposed to tell
Greenland
people?
the melting that's occurring right now in Greenland in June is comparable to what happened in June 2012. And 2012 ended up becoming the by far the worst melt season on record for Greenland. I mean, there were parts of like July and
Mm-hmm.
August, like most of the ice sheet was the surface of the ice sheet was melting, and you had significant rise in sea level in 2012.
Right.
You have right now we're getting similar atmospheric conditions favorable for another near record or record melt season for Greenland this year, and for sea ice destruction. That's which was also a record in 2012. In 2012, you had record total surface melt from Greenland and record low sea ice extent in September of 2012. The same or very similar atmospheric conditions are occurring right now in the Arctic, where you could see a potential record low extent in September, and you could see a record high surface melt,
Mm-hmm.
total surface melt from Greenland that will cause an acceleration in sea level rise because all that water just pours into the oceans.
Right.
So so you get melting every year, but this level of it is extreme. It's only happened for June. It's only happened once this bad, and that was in 2012. And of course, we have to see what July, August, September look like. But the suggestion from those that track this stuff, the scientists that track Arctic weather, is that there's a potential that you could see record low sea ice extent and record high surface melt from Greenland
Well,
because it's just so hot.
Torstein said his own research shows a tipping point in the 1980s, maybe even earlier. Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's when global warming globally began to accelerate. I was on Nature Bats Last with Guy McPherson and Kevin Hester
Mm-hmm.
last week, and I told them that I believe that what we could call abrupt climate change um, initiated in the 1980s. I mean, you had, or by the late 1970s, it could have been from a combination of the sea ice in the
Mm-hmm.
Arctic reaching a certain extent, and it started to accelerate
Right.
Arctic warming. It could have been actually from losses of dimming. And we talk a lot about global dimming. Global dimming declined somewhat in the 1980s compared to the 60s and 70s. So that may have brought in more solar energy to warm things further. The oceans may have just reached a tipping point with warming. Nobody really knows what caused it. It could have been a combination of a bunch of things, but you had an acceleration clearly of global warming and land warming and Arctic warming all in the 1980s and 90s, and it really picked up in the 2000s in the Arctic. I mean, a lot of naysayers will say that global warming somehow ceased in around the early mid 2000s.
Right.
It didn't really cease. We still have record high record temperatures, and I think in 2005, 2008, 2010, 2007, and 2010, I think. But the Arctic got much hotter than it was previous decades, and that's obviously gotten worse faster. And now the whole planet is responding. Since basically the mid 2000s, every year has been a top five warmish year on record, and obviously 2014, 15, and 16 we had three warmish years on record, breaking the previous year's record. Um, and this year has the potential to be a top one or two record year or near record year.
We got a question.
Because it's so
Oh,
hot
sorry. Sorry.
in the Arctic.
Yep. I didn't mean to. I thought because this is a perfect segue for this. And sorry, Nicholas, I did not mean to do this. I got excited at this question because I was thinking the same thing. Consume less. How quickly will things speed up once we have a blue ocean event? Who knows, or is there an estimate? Now I know for me, I always say we're already in it, and it's not going to be like boom, boom, one thing. Okay, BOE, we're done. It's gradual.
But well, I mean, yes, I agree with that notion that we're already in a state of abrupt change. So the we're basically falling, like falling down a cliff. We're falling faster and faster through this transitions from Holocene climate, the climate we've lived for the past 10,000 years, to the hothouse state
Right.
that obviously is not livable for much of a large life on this planet that is not evolved to deal with those kind of conditions, and particularly the rate of change to getting to those conditions. But what you could see is, and I talked about this on my blog before, and I've talked about it, is if you're on an exponential path where you generally have a certain rate of change in your temperatures and your fires and floods and everything else caused by the changing climate that's doubling every certain number of years, that with a blue ocean event where, and I mean the arbitrary number of 1 million square kilometers or less, I mean that it could be higher than that, or it could be lower than that, or it could be something that's very fuzzy, but there may be a point where you get so much heat energy coming into the Arctic system that you get a super exponential rise, where suddenly you get a kink in your changes, and your changes accelerate just a little bit faster, and you don't notice it at first, but you notice it like a year or two later that something is dramatically shifted, and that could be just the fires suddenly get bigger and more destructive. You get mass death of forests. You get heat that's unbearable, and hurricanes that are dumping prolific amounts of rain. Sounds like something what I'm already describing has already happened, right?
It sure as hell does to me, Nicholas. I mean, come on, we see it every day now.
So I mean, it's a possibility that we've already crossed that tipping point in the past couple of years. Because I mean, I've noticed that you don't notice it when when it starts, but you get for the human mind, you need data points. So if you get enough data points, like 2016, 17 seems really worse than 16. 18 seems really even more so than 17, which seemed unbelievable because there was some nasty events in 2017, especially in the tropics. And then 2019 just seems like, what in the world is going on? Maybe something's happened, and we just didn't see it at the moment it's happened because we were looking for these arbitrary values to be crossed before everything blows up, and we may have already crossed it.
Right.
As they say, it's already it's in the rearview mirror, and that may have been already what's happened here. And it's hard to know, but I think it's always going to be hard to know where you're at because things are changing so rapidly. But when I imagine what a blue ocean event, I guess, would have done to dramatically alter, short of maybe some kind of major methane eruption or something, this is pretty much it. I mean, this is like everything we're witnessing: the crop failures globally, the huge fires in California the past couple of years. I mean, it's been in Siberia. I mean, tree deaths, mass deaths of high tree mortality from the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, California, the Amazon, Siberia.
Everywhere.
The huge droughts in Australia that and
Hmm.
these drought areas become flooded for hundreds of thousands of square miles and mass amounts of water. Um, that's that's really what I would imagine. And so it may already be happening.
Well,
And
Moose Gal, she's asking you as a meteorologist, what do you would happen if humans do nothing to reduce global climate change? And I mean, we're doing nothing, but
yeah,
I mean, you're asking him actually to prognosticate, to actually say, okay, WASF, and that's up to you, Nicholas.
well, I mean, I've already made it clear in the past. I don't see climate change as stoppable. Because in order to stop it, you have to reverse. You need reverse everything that's been done so far. You just can't turn it off.
Yeah.
But in order to reverse something, you need energy to do it, and energy require um, using energy produces waste. So what's that waste gonna be? Because
Yeah, right?
if you're gonna use tons of land, try to reclaim tons of land to try to sequester carbon, if you're trying to actually build infrastructure to store the carbon in the ground to prevent it from being re-released, because it can't just be in the soil, because as the planet warms, that carbon is going to be released back to the atmosphere. You
Mm-hmm.
have to store it like deep, and build the renewable infrastructure, and it has to be global. You can't have just the high consuming countries do it, because you have other countries that are becoming higher consuming and burning coal.
Yep.
Everybody has to do it, even though it may not be fair. you know the earth unfortunately does not care about fairness. It just cares about thermodynamic balance. To do all of that requires using fossil fuels more to get off of fossil fuels. It's the only way. You have to use the existing energy, the highest level energy, to produce something different that's different from it. It's always been that way in human history with energy. But in order to do that,
Energy.
you have to add more
Beginning of the end.
pollution to the atmosphere, to the soils, to the oceans to do it. But you're already at a phase where you have too much, and it's causing all this damage and destruction. So that's why a lot of people call it a predicament, because you're trying to use the laws of thermodynamics to try to get around a thermodynamic problem. And early the earlier you start to fix this problem, the easier it is to get around it. But when you've gotten so far along, it's very hard to get around the fact that you've just polluted your closed system, the Earth, so much that in order to get out of it, you have to pollute it more. It's a paradox.
Yeah, of course. You know, Nicholas, the other day, I did a live thing on the landfill gas, the methane. And
Yeah,
then I didn't do my follow up, which was going to be Sandy's field trip to the landfill. I went to the landfill on this field trip, and the company showed us everything. It was like being on another planet. Okay,
yeah,
it was insanity. I have a question because they're converting the methane, the CH4, they're converting it. They're not just flaring it, they're converting it. They have power plants and they're converting it so that it's CO2 as the byproduct. So most everybody that was on with me live explained it to me because I didn't understand. They call it renewable. I'm like, how in the hell can landfill gas be renewable? You know why it's renewable? Because it keeps making itself over and it keeps making more. It's renewing itself with more trash and shit garbage, right? Okay. Can you give me,
that's
and this is what I
interesting.
wanted to ask you. This is what nobody else is, the way my brainwaves are. So here's the landfill converting the methane, and everybody's saying, well, it's less horrible to do it this way. What about the methane up in the Arctic? What about the methane up? That's coming out, seeping out as CH4, correct? That is the dangerous,
Yeah.
awful methane. Is anybody talking about some kind of harebrained scheme on capturing it?
Well, I mean, in order to capture it,
Billions of
you'd
miles?
have Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the East Siberian Shelf is is thought by is estimated by Natalia Shikova and a few other researchers that worked with her to be the largest single like organic carbon store on the planet, and it's deep. The sediments are deep, so this one of the reasons she's concerned about methane eruptions basically
Hmm.
is that it's high in concentration, it's deep in sediments, so there's tons of hydrates. Hydrates are in the permafrost, but
Right.
under that is the free gas that can come out very rapidly, and then the waters over the shelf are very shallow, so if it comes out, it has no time to be metabolized into carbon dioxide and other products, less impactful products, at least in short-term impacts, by microbes. Like would happen in the deep ocean.
Okay.
So in order to deal with that from an industrial scale, you would have to build a huge infrastructure over that entire
It would be crazy.
region
Of course.
that's underwater. I mean, and I don't know if humans have the technological
No.
capability to
But no,
handle what's under there. I mean, it's like
but
trying to deal
Nicholas,
with a volcano. It's trying to
right.
control a volcano, and we can't
Yeah.
control volcanoes. They just blow things up. That's literally what Jakova seems to be suggesting. You're dealing with a volcano.
Volcano.
It's almost like a volcano. Except it would erupt. It could erupt many gigatons of methane at once instead of erupting lava. It just erupts in
Couldn't this happen
gas.
at landfills? I mean, my question is, do we have man-made volcanoes all over the world that nobody talks about in these freaking landfills?
Well, I mean, they're the landfills. I mean, they're basically slow motion volcanoes. You could call them. They're venting the methane from because there's microbes in
Yeah,
the
but they have these
garbage.
sophisticated piping
You know,
systems that are insane. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And planet eaters. It looked like I was on another
yeah.
planet. But that's what I thought.
Well,
I
I mean,
immediately thought it's the same thing as what's
yeah,
happening in the permafrost.
yeah. It's just the permafrost is a lot bigger.
Oh
It's the
yeah.
scale
But how many landfills
is
are
like
there in the world?
yeah, but they're all spread out everywhere. Whereas this is a huge not only surface area but depth.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I mean, I just don't see it current technology of man to be capable of dealing with that right now. I mean, it would have to be it would be many trillions of dollars effort, I would imagine, because of the
Yeah.
scale. Um,
Well,
and we got, I mean, you're talking about
what do we have in
1,400
here?
gigatons of methane. I mean, it's just crazy amount of gas. And
It's pretty
there's five
scary.
and there's 5 billion gigatons. At least in 2012, there was 5 billion gigatons of methane in the or 5 billion tons, 5 gigatons um, of methane in the atmosphere right now. So
Well,
um,
Torstein, he said that methane is just all over, bubbling all over for decades. So I mean,
yeah,
sometimes I think, are we like all this work at these landfills? It sort of seems like, oh, big deal. We're going to have
yeah,
so much methane from up in the
yeah,
Arctic, and that just brings
yeah,
back that other thing that went on. Remember the controversy last year
yeah,
over the methane, and who was it? Yale Climate Collections Connections came
yeah,
out, and they were like, "Oh no, I'm so," with the girl,
yeah.
the girl. Well, you're just citing the research right there,
Yeah, I'm
Jacoba.
citing the research. Yeah, I mean, some of the research are people and there are others. I mean, obviously, there's her. I believe it's her husband,
Hmm.
Samilitov. There's
Yeah.
Ira Leifer in the United
Oh
States.
yeah.
Um, there's others, that have worked, including co-written papers with Shakova. They've been up there. Obviously, Wadhams takes it seriously, even though I don't believe he's actually worked with her directly. He takes the research that she's done seriously because he's been up there doing other research into sea ice, so he understands the potential. I think the scientists that seem to that are Jason Box too in Greenland, another one. It seems like the ones that are actually up there regularly witnessing like truly abrupt climate change, like truly abrupt change. I mean, where they go, you know, go see something, and then 5 years later, it's like completely different. Like, what happened? This isn't the same place. The ice is gone, the glacier is gone, the water is warm. There's like bubbling of methane out of the
Exponential
ground. Yeah,
change.
yeah. It's actually, you can actually see the exponential function in the Arctic. You
Right.
can, here in the United States, people, there's ways to deny climate change if you live anywhere else in the world. But north of like 60 north or
Right.
65 north is when you start to really see some really profound changes. And I mean, temperatures 30 to 40 Fahrenheit above normal becoming more normal in Siberia. I mean, that's temperatures in the 70s and 80s that should be in the 50s, 40s, maybe even the 30s. And that norm was late 20th century. So like 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, temperatures up there right now would have been, say, in the 40s, maybe.
Right.
Now they're in the 70s.
It's insane.
So
It is. I never saw, I mean, in my lifetime, I never thought I would ever witness this, but I got a couple of things going on in the chat. I mean, the chat looks busy. I wanted to, Alaric has a question. Anyone know about Alan Savory and the Savory Institute reversing desertification and permaculture to reclaim the world's deserts? I'm going to put it up so people can see it. I think we did something or had something or something was sent to me. I don't know, Alaric. That's I think for me to research. Nicholas, have you heard of this? And what do you think about? I know you're a meteorologist, but what do you think about trying? Even.
I think I'm of the opinion that there should be efforts done to try to, when I say adapt, it's really in climate change jargon, it's more like adapt to climate change. I mean, most people use adaptation like it's something you can do that will save us or something. I don't really buy that, but I think there's nothing wrong with trying to adapt as best you can. Because we're still here, we're still alive, we're still trying to live on a planet that's getting hotter, wetter, and more destructive against us as a species. So why not do things while we are still able to with some kind of economic infrastructure to try to lessen the suffering of people? Have a means to help people that are going to be migrating from places that we know are going to get very hot in the subtropics and the tropics. Stop building so much along shorelines. All this building that continues, population growth that continues along coastlines is like active denial. Those places are not going to be here.
Yeah, Florida, insane.
Improve your agricultural production. Find ways. Give farmers options to be able to grow other things if the crops that they are normally their staples aren't able to be grown in their areas anymore, or even just in a particular season. Find other ways to adapt. On an economic level. There's all sorts of ways to deal with this, and what I find is an inevitable change. Because all of these, be quite frank, all of these cockamamie ideas about trying to, or we're going to, build these carbon capture and storage and infrastructure. We're going to do all of this building. We're going to take it. To me, it's like it's laughing in the face of thermodynamic problems that you just can't solve because it's too far gone. You can't. We have 415 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. you have to at a minimum get it to like 350, and really you need to get it to like 300, to and you have to make it colder. And I remember David Wasdell, that the Apollo Gaia Project, mentioned this in
Yeah.
one of his presentations, like from the late 2000s, that's posted on YouTube. He explained you need to really make it colder in the Arctic than it used to be to make it freeze faster, to get rid of the heat that's built up in the oceans and get sea ice growing fast. And 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 no one really knows how to do that, so they come up with ideas. Oh, let's spray stuff. Let's try to cool it off. And as a meteorologist, all I can think of, well, you could try to cool off the Arctic, but the rest of the planet's going to invade with its heat and try to counteract your technological attempts to cool the Arctic. It's just too. It's too. Well, I was going to say it's too technologically challenging, but it's too technologically challenging because it's supposed to be. It's heat always it always wins until it dissipates. And
Heat
you can
always
move the heat
wins.
around, you can try to do all these little tricks, but the heat is always inevitably going to distribute itself in ways that destroy or eliminate cold. So it's going to destroy the sea ice, it's going to destroy the ice sheets, it's going to destroy alpine glaciation, it's going to heat places and turn grasslands into deserts and burn forests, and so the only way to deal with it is to either not let it get that warm in the first place by not putting the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in the first place, too late,
Too late.
or you have to wait thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years for all that carbon to sequester. Well, I mean, that's too late for us. So, you know, it's easier to do all the measures needed to try to adapt and help people and animals and plants to the best of our ability to the changes we know are coming until we can't anymore, versus trying to pretend like we can control it, the whole process. We've made so many changes that it's impossible, in my view, to stop it. You can't.
Right.
Once you polluted, you can't take it back. Once you poisoned, you can't just take it back. There's that changes that are damaging that have to come to fruition because of what we've done to the atmosphere, to the oceans, and to the soils.
Yeah, and what
So
we've
the best
done.
so for the best you can do is just try to fix what you can. So
Live. We're
do
living with it.
everything with fix what you
And
can and try to
you know,
adapt as best you can.
and it's Father's Day, by the way. Happy Father's Day, Nicholas.
Thank you.
And see, that's the thing. We have reasons to do the best we can, no matter how shitty the news is. We know how shitty the news is. We hear it all the
Yeah,
time. It's scary. But locally, you have where you live. You
yeah.
have the ability to at least make where you live a better place. And that could segue to what's happening in the breadbasket a little bit since you are in Nebraska. I know I'm putting a monkey wrench in here, but I would like to hear about a little updating on that part of the country, since people in the comments are talking about a little bit. They were talking about that.
Well, I don't know all the details of numbers. I know it's as far as planting, it's still very late for a lot of farmers in Nebraska, Iowa.
Yeah.
It's even worse in parts of Dakotas and Minnesota and particularly Illinois. I've heard is very bad right now. Driving around the county that I live in, I've seen some soybeans planted.
Okay.
Not much corn that I've seen actually. I haven't seen that much corn. I've seen some soybeans. I think maybe the soybeans can handle a little bit wetter conditions compared to the corn, but I've also seen a lot of fields that just aren't planted. They're just
It's
not
10
not
o'clock.
not there. So um,
Wow.
the what comes of this obviously will be the effects on pricing. And I mean, it's kind of the thing is the stores will always do the best they can to keep everything full, but of course it's going to be reflected as higher prices to buy that stuff and not empty the stores.
Oh
So
gosh.
yeah, so I mean,
And then I
how
heard we hear about the farmers are getting only pennies on the dollar. We hear that there's the big bailout of the farmers, but they're getting pennies on the dollar because you really can't. They also have tariffs now they're dealing with. So farmers are
yeah, I
screwed either
mean,
which way.
yeah, the tariffs are also painful. I mean, the
Yeah,
Nebraska farmers had already lost like $1 billion on the tariffs before the floods. Now they have the floods,
yeah.
and the
There you go.
soybeans. I don't think China is even taking the soybeans anymore. I don't remember the details of that, but um, there's been a lot of problems from the tariffs that didn't need to happen, and now
No,
we
of
have.
course not.
So you have political problems, reactionary behavior from the governments that is common with either a depression or pre-depression state. And our economy globally seems to be falling towards a major recession, and it could
Yeah.
be a depression just because of the huge amount of debt in the system that will never be paid. The debt is huge and will never be paid. These debts, these national debts, these private debts. I have loans that I will probably never pay back
Right.
because the economy will tank
Student
before I.
loans.
Yeah, student loans
My
and
daughter too.
medical debts, and
Yeah.
it's significant for lots
That's
and lots
all.
of people in the
Mm-hmm.
United States alone.
The
And
United States is insane. Okay, we're not going to even go political because that's a whole other rant, and I'm not
yeah,
going there. We
yeah,
could, but we're not because we're already an hour. So, what
yeah.
I want to ask you, Nicholas, is do you want to take some more questions? We have somebody in that's kind of new to the whole thing, and Moose Gal, and Moose Gal. I can't show you the bench right now. They were talking about this bench I got that has moose on it. But
Oh.
Nicholas, if humans rid all the plastic from our oceans, how much cooler would our oceans be? If I understand correctly, plastic in oceans make the temperature rise, right? Is
I
that even is the ocean heat
I've
contingent
never
on?
I've never heard of plastic having a thermal effect on the oceans. Although I've heard some suggest they could actually be reflective and cool the oceans a little bit. But I don't know if plastic in the oceans to do that yet. Even
I
though
never
the
heard
amount
about
of
it.
plastic in the oceans is quite
Yeah,
horrible.
it's crazy.
um, yeah.
Can you see the
Um,
questions, Nick?
no, I'm not. I'm
Okay,
not
you
looking at
all
the
right.
questions
Then
right now. Yeah.
I'm going to get say hi to Kent Deal. He's here and he said crop losses in France now too are
Yeah,
adding
that's what
up.
I mentioned.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Kent's all Kent. Well, everybody knows Kent. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Consume less. I love that name. Everybody does. The weather will not be reliable enough to grow crops anymore this year, maybe every year. Well, we're trying here with our own little garden, and our farmers just are getting things in, but it doesn't
Yeah.
stop raining.
Yeah.
It does for a little while.
It's just hard. It's hard to grow crops when you don't know what the weather's going to be
Right.
every season. That's your climate. Your average conditions. But you might expect a heavy rain here, or you might have a risk of a hailstorm there that could ruin your crops in one year, and you have to use your insurance to pay you back and some money, and then you do it again next year, and things are fine. That's the way it's always been. Bad things happen. You don't really see a lot of extreme events. Occasionally you do, like the Dust Bowl, and
Right.
obviously that was a big deal locally in this region of the world.
Yeah.
Now you have those conditions appearing all over the world. So it's when you don't know what your climate is anymore, you don't have confidence to plant and it'll make it through the season. And if you do, if you try, it gets destroyed
And
by something.
it's a real issue. I mean,
Oh,
here,
yeah,
I literally was feeling like we were living in the Pacific Northwest, that we're in the Pacific Northwest,
yeah,
even though we're in Western New York, because we are getting those weather patterns. And then Jeff Pearson and others from Oregon are saying it's hot and drier.
yeah.
And so when is anybody really, besides just all of us, going to wake up? Maybe never, you
Well,
know?
I watched Face the Nation this morning on CBS,
You did.
and yeah, and the talk was politics and healthcare is the biggest issue for Democrats and Republicans. I didn't hear a single thing about climate change. I mean,
Now,
it might. I mean, most from what I've heard, most Americans, a majority of Americans, seem to understand climate change is happening and is caused by humans.
hmm
But it, it's a different. There's a difference between acknowledging something and acknowledging that it's an emergency. That's an immediate problem and an emergency. Most people on this planet are not thinking that way. At least most people in the developed world. I think increasingly in the developing world,
yeah,
they see this craziness happening in their particularly those that are living in smaller towns and villages where they're a part of civilized life, but they're more connected to nature.
yeah,
They understand that something is happening. They don't need to know all the specific numbers and data like we go over, on the show. They could be
hmm
living in sub-Saharan Africa or in a small village in India, but they see it, and they have to decide whether do I keep trying to live here or do I have to move somewhere? Those decisions are on a global scale are starting to be decided upon by people, by individuals in Central America, in India, in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia. You have people now starting to walk away. Australia, actually, there are towns down in Australia I've heard that are becoming increasingly abandoned because the droughts just don't end. From overexploitation of the land, overexploitation of the groundwater, and of course, increasing drought from abrupt climate change, and people are just packing up and leaving. Because there's what am I gonna do
yeah.
here?
Where are
There's
they
nothing
going to
to
go
do.
though? I mean,
Yeah,
now everybody wants to
they go
build
to the
walls.
cities, and the cities get stressed. You
Yeah,
know, yeah,
but you see, the countries are leaning to a direction, and they want to build walls, and they want to keep people out. And I think that
yeah,
I think we're starting to see it. People are. I mean, we're seeing numbers like in India, 81 died.
yeah,
71 died. We see it, and it's like not real. It seems so, we're so disconnected. And Maggie
yeah.
was saying
I
about
mean,
our Maggie
yeah.
May is with
Like,
us, and she
oh,
was
go
saying
ahead.
about that.
Yeah,
Oh, I was just giving her a little shout out, because she was saying that about the media, and it's such a disconnect with the media, like being in the twilight zone. Yes, Maggie, it is. We are in the twilight zone. Truly, I feel like that.
yeah. I mean, could you imagine 5 years ago or 10 years ago hearing news stories of so many places dealing with either actual air temperatures or heat indices over 120 degrees.
No.
I mean, I don't remember. I mean, I try.
No, I'm
I'm gonna
older
be.
than you. We heard it
Yeah,
in Arizona, places, but
yeah. Where it gets.
it was never consistent.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's like, um, India, 145, 50 degrees Celsius. Like what?
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey
That's
says talking about climate change on the news will only happen when the cost in dollars is high enough.
yeah, it's all about dollar bills. Hurricane Harvey was a killer, but it was much more for the United States, where we can are a little bit more resilient, if you will, because of our warning systems and
Yeah.
infrastructure. Our infrastructure is kind of garbage too, but
Yeah.
it's better than perhaps Mozambique or developing countries. We don't lose huge numbers of lives most of the time. Hurricane Katrina was a big exception to that in a modern time, but Hurricane Harvey, I think it killed 60 or 70 people,
hmm
but it was the dollars, 25 you know,
Sure.
or some huge amount of dollars. I think it was like 125 billion dollars in damage or something. I mean, it was huge, and so that's what gets all the
All the
coverage.
money, honey. We all
Yeah,
know that, right? Everybody here
yeah,
can tell you that. Well,
yeah.
listen, I
Hmm.
wanna I wanna say that we've been on for uh, about an hour and 10 minutes, and I think it would be good to now just say to everybody if there's any last comments or questions, because I don't know, Nicholas, you want to keep going, or I
Well,
think
I
an
think it's
hour's,
getting
yeah,
late, so
I
an
think an
hour's
hour's good.
good.
Oh, CB's with
Yeah.
us. Oh, he lost his power. What'd you lose your power, CB? Huh? Down there, and he's down in the south. Um, all right. Well, listen, guys. Nicholas, I'm going to give you the floor to say what you want. This is our monthly show. I think it went pretty good. We didn't have too many technical snafus, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't cut your head off for 5 minutes like I did Antonio's. So okay, go for it.
Nothing much else to say. I think as far as like an outlook for the summer, and we can expect continued extreme heat events that are dangerous to people and animals across the northern hemisphere. India is going to continue to be hot for at least the much of the rest of this month until the monsoon can hopefully kick in. Mexico, extreme heat. Fire danger is going to start to go up in Western North America, and heavy rainfall is going to continue for parts of Eastern North America and Western Europe. Will have to also deal with those impacts. The sea ice, like I said earlier, we're probably looking at a top three lowest year on record for the sea ice. It could be the lowest on record pretty easily. It could be significantly lower than the previous record in 2012 at this point, because the state of the ice is much worse than it was in 2012, especially in the Central Arctic Basin. And we could be looking at one of the worst melt seasons on record for Greenland too. So sea levels will rise further. So I think we're starting to enter that period where climate change is now the period of consequences, where you're starting to see um, more people dealing with changes that aren't that stay the same for so long. For compared to the average person, you're going to average person's lifetime, and when they need to work and live and have a livelihood, they're just going to walk away. So you're going to see an increase in climate change related migrations this year going into the coming years. So we're in this process of climate change now. So we're going to start seeing everything that has been predicted for the past couple decades happening at an accelerated pace this year into next year. Particularly if the economy really tanks, then you're going to really see people turning away and retreating, and obviously that goes into politics and social issues, because where are all these people going to go?
Well, maybe next time we can talk a little about prepping. All right. We can do a Nicholas the meteorologist on prepping
Sounds
for
good.
abrupt climate change. Well, we've all got to do something. I mean,
Yeah,
we could go on for another hour about how we live our lives. That's another show. So when you come
yeah,
back next month, because we typically this is a monthly show here. I think it's pretty good.
yeah.
Everybody that's with us, think of topics that you would like us to deal with. And of course, Nick, because he is the expert. I'm just the foil. But think of that and send us environmentalcoffeehouse@gmail.com. And if there's anything really interesting, I'll send it to Nick and we'll mull it over and see what kind of show the next one could be. And maybe we'll have one in 2 weeks. Who knows?
Cool. Yeah, and if
Okay.
there's the major events, we can talk about those too.
Oh, yes, major events. Absolutely. This worked well. I got the software a little bit better. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Nicholas. This was really
Yeah.
good. Wait a second. We'll finish this and I'll say, peace, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, it's scary, but we all got to live for today. That's what I say.